Hi there booktube, it's Eleanor here and I come to you from a very plain background because I am waiting for my new bookshelves to arrive, and then I shall have lots and lots of lovely books all around me, and I'm really excited. I finally bit the bullet and decided to get some new bookshelves, so hopefully that will help me to organise my books better. So anyway, it's been a while. I haven't managed to do my Friday reads last week. Things have just been a bit manic at home, and so the videos that take a bit more time I have left for a little while, but today I've got a bit of time, so I thought I would talk to you about the books I've read over the last 8 or 9 days, just to get myself back on track. So these are mainly, I think, if not all, books that I read during Diversathon. Now, I really enjoyed picking books for Diversathon, especially trying to find own voices books. The first thing that I listened to, in fact, rather than read, was Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. If you've seen my January wrap up, you'll know that it was one of 2 5-star books that I read this month. It's a non-fiction book and it's about Bryan Stevenson's career. Bryan Stevenson, when he was a young lawyer, founded the Equal Justice Initiative, which is an initiative that dedicates itself to defending those that are most in need. One of his first cases was Walter Macmillan, who was on death row for manslaughter, which he insisted that he was innocent of. So throughout the book we are following this story, which sort of wraps up and concludes at the end, but we're following that through, and also interspersed between chapters about Walter Macmillan are chapters about other people that Bryan Stevenson met and helped over his time as a lawyer. He recounts numerous tragedies of justice for those who need it the most. It was quite a rough read. It was very eye-opening. There were times that I found myself angry and crying, but it's a definite read, a must read, and I gave this one 5 stars. Next up, I picked up Juliet Takes a Breath by Gabby Rivera. This is a book I'd heard loads about. I'd heard it was brilliant, and so I was really excited to get stuck in. It's quite a short book at just over sort of 250 pages. So I thought, well, this will be quite a quick read as well and good for a readathon. The basic story in this is that we're following Juliet, and we're following her sort of coming of age, coming of sexuality, coming of identity, I suppose. Juliet is a lesbian. She's been in a relationship with her college roommate, or she's been in relationship with a woman, and she's just come out to her family the night before she has left to be the intern of a famous feminist author who she quite worships. So we're just following her journey, meeting this author and learning a bit more about herself and her sexuality, really. I think the biggest problem I had with this was that there was a lot of telling going on and not a lot of showing. I know that I've read reviews from other people since reading this who have felt the same. I felt like there was less story and more sort of monologues and thoughts in there, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I do think that it was detrimental in this case because it meant that I didn't find that Juliet had as much emotional depth and connection as I would have liked, because I felt like an outsider looking in. I think it was great in terms of own voices, and hearing from a Puerto Rican Latino's voice is really important. It's not one that I've read before, and I really enjoyed hearing about someone else's life from a different point of view. I just wish for me this had been a little bit more engaging. So unfortunately it was a good read. I definitely enjoyed it, but it wasn't a great read like I was hoping, so I gave this one 3 stars. Next, I moved on to Born Confused by Tanuja Desai Hidia. This is a book I've had on my shelf for ages. It's a YA contemporary story, and I just hadn't picked it up yet. We're following the story of Dimples. She's just turned 17. She lives in America with her mum and her dad, and she's like every 17-year-old. She's a bit disillusioned with her parents. She thinks they're old fuddy-duddies, and she's interested in boys. She's had a boyfriend, but she kind of feels often like she can't see herself places. At school she feels like she's one of 2 other Indians, and she feels like she can't see herself and her place. And Her best friend is constantly trying to get her to go out and drink and meet boys and do things, and her best friend keeps sort of dropping her every time she meets a new man. And Dimple's parents decide after one sort of fateful night that they're going to try and set her up with the suitable boy and look at sort of not arranged marriage, but trying to set her up with someone that they approve of. Well, we all know what happens when our parents try and set us up with someone, and the same happens for Dimple. She doesn't like this person they try and set her up with. However, things start to unravel. She starts to find out a bit more about her culture. She starts to reconnect with one of her cousins who is at university. She starts to find out more about this boy, and we're just following her journey of discovery really, and learning more about herself and her culture. And I just thought it was really, really good, and I gave this one 4 stars. Next, I picked up a book that I'd been anticipating for ages, and that was On the Edge of Gone by Corinne Juvis. I picked this up because it's science fiction and fantasy, which I thought was brilliant, but it is also has an autistic main character, and I really, really enjoyed the idea of that, and I really enjoyed this aspect of the story. It really did change the dynamic. We really looked at sort of the struggles that an autistic person might face in certain situations. The story is basically a apocalyptic type story. You've got a meteor that's coming to Earth. People have had fair warning, so there's shelters set up. Some people have won the lottery or have managed to get places on these generation ships that are going into space. And our main character in this and her mother are waiting at home at the very beginning of the book for the main character's sister to come home, who she hasn't come home yet, and they need to get to the shelter. One thing leads to another, and they end up on a generation ship that hasn't left yet, and it's just about them working out their place. Is there a place for them on this ship? How are they going to survive? The problems that Denise faces as a young person and an autistic person, and how she feels she can contribute. Her mother is an addict, and her sister is a transgender, and so it's just got some really, really interesting voices in here, and some really interesting conversations and sides that you see. The only problem I struggled with was that it felt a bit slow moving for me, and I think had I known that it was more of an exploration of the characters rather than, for some reason I go into science fiction and fantasy books and I want something that's fast paced. I always expect something that's sort of battles and loads of like action, and with this it sort of lacked that a little bit for me, and I felt like little bits of it dragged, and for that reason I gave it 3 stars. But I really enjoyed it, and it was very refreshing to see an autistic character's point of view. The next book I picked up was Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. This was one that I was just drawn to. It's for my diversity bingo, and I had heard that it had a character that was on the ACE spectrum, an asexual character, and that is true. There is one of the main characters in here that's on the ACE spectrum, and I really, really enjoyed this. It was a proper page turner. I read it in 24 hours, and it's a YA contemporary story. We're following Frances. She is a straight A student at school. She's head girl. She's set to go to Cambridge or Oxford, and she focuses on work, and she doesn't really have many friends at school. She's sort of seen as the sort of nerdy one. She's not interested in going out and getting drunk and doing the same things as her friends, but she's really into art and fan art for her favourite podcast, which she listens to religiously, and she ends up making friends with the creator of this podcast, and it's a look at the final year at school and people's relationships with each other, their sexuality, their relationships with family, making friends, being who you are, discovering who you are, and having the confidence to be that person. And I really enjoyed this. And one of the favourite aspects for me was the relationship between Frances and her mother. Frances and her mother have a wonderful relationship, a really nice friendship as well, that still has that motherly and daughter respect, but doesn't cross that boundary into like best buds. But there is a lovely relationship between the two of them, and the mother is very much present in her life, which I really enjoy, because often in YAs the parents seem to be a bit absent, but this they weren't, and it was great. And in this, Frances is also of multi-heritage. I think her father is Ethiopian and her mother is white British, so that's a really interesting dynamic as well. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this, and I gave it 4 stars. And then the final book I want to speak about is, again, for the diversity bingo. This is a retelling with the main character on the LGBTQIA+, and that is Great by Sarah Benacasa. I really wanted to read this. It was quite a short one. I knew I could sort of slot it in before the end of the month. And this is a retelling of The Great Gatsby, but with our main characters as 2 females, so lesbian main characters, which I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the story. It was very much a straight retelling, excuse the pun, of The Great Gatsby. There was, you know, it was literally the story just with the characters' sexualities changed really, and sort of younger characters, and obviously set in a different time, so that sounds like it's really different, but the story is very much The Great Gatsby. And I liked that, but I kind of wish there had been a little bit more of its own spin. We're following our main character whose parents are split up. Her mother is like a celebrity chef baker and has made loads of money since divorcing her father. So she lives most of the year with her father in Chicago, but in the summer she goes to the Hamptons and stays with her mother, who she doesn't get on with at all. She normally spends her time there reading books and just sort of trying to stay out of her mum's way. This year she makes a few friends. They are rich daughters and sons of high profile senators and bankers and various things. And next door to her, a girl moves in and rents the house and throws these lavish parties, and it's just about what happens. If you know The Great Gatsby story, you'll know about what happens. I liked it. I liked the characters. I liked that we had this LGBTQIA plus aspect to it, but yeah, like I say, it was just a straight retelling, and so I felt it sort of lacked some originality there, but a good quick read. I read this again in, you know, a number of hours really, so I gave this one 3 stars. Phew! So that's all the books wrapped up that I've read recently. We're back on track now, so keep an eye out. Normally every Friday I upload what I've read during the week, and you get mini reviews of all the books that I have been reading. But I had a really good January. I'm really excited to continue with my diversity bingo. I think I've read 7 or 8 of the 36 now, which I'm really pleased about. And you will have seen now my February TBR, and the Shelf Slam is going to be books over 400 pages, so watch this space for that. It's going to be a bit more of a challenge to get to 12 books this month, but I'm sure I can do it, and I've picked some good ones to pick from, so I'm really excited, and I hope you're all looking forward to February, and I look forward to hearing about what you're reading. Anyway, have you read any of these? What were your thoughts? Do they differ? Are they the same? Let's chat in the comments as always. Bye for now, BookTube.